Hey YouTube, Jason here, and today I'm going to show you how I edit my videos and get them ready to publish. This is a follow-up to my last video where I showed you the gear I use and how I staged my shots. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the software I use, the workflows I've developed, and the lessons I've learned along the way. My hope for this video is that it will inspire you and get you editing in more creative ways. I'm Jason, aka Maslin Monty. Let's get to editing. Before we get started, I need to clarify that I edit on a Mac and use mostly Mac-specific software, but this video isn't a total wash if you're on a PC. One reason I edit with the tools I'm about to mention is their ease of use. I'll list alternatives to the ones I use because at one point or another, I've tried them. So before we dive into my flow, let me shotgun the tools that I use. For video editing, I use Apple's Final Cut Pro. For animations, I use Apple's Motion. For audio recording and background music, I use GarageBand on my Mac. For screen capture, I use QuickTime Player, and for thumbnails, I use Pixelmator and Pixelmator Pro. Now that that's out of the way, let's step back in time to the last video when I was recording audio. The recording was done with GarageBand. In the last couple months, I've switched to recording all of my voiceovers in one take while the camera is aimed at me. This is in contrast to my old way of recording, which divorced audio from video and I'd record one line at a time to eventually be placed over B-roll footage. Recording audio over B-roll had its advantages, like being able to directly read takes instead of look into the camera, and this allowed me to get closer to the mic and to turn the gain down for slightly cleaner audio. But since YouTube is a weekend hobby, I don't have a ton of time devoted to making videos. So I can kill two birds with one stone by recording voiceover with video on me. To show you why, let's jump over to Final Cut Pro. Once I import my audio from GarageBand and my video from my SD card, I can highlight both, right-click, and hit Synchronize Clips to make them match up together to make the audio perfectly in line with the video. From there, I can silence the camera's audio and start chipping away at my long take. After cutting down the best takes of each line, I'm left with just the skeleton of my video. From here, we've just got one long take of me staring into the camera talking. Not too compelling. This is where B-roll footage comes in. Depending on the topic or my schedule, I may have already recorded B-roll, or I may wait till I get an idea of the length of my project. For my channel, I use a mix of website screenshots, screen recordings, B-roll footage I shot, and promo materials from brands I'm talking about. For screenshots, I use the Mac's built-in screenshot tool, and for screen recordings, I've mapped a QuickTime shortcut to my touch bar via the app Better Touch Tool. Windows 10 users can use Screen Print for capturing screenshots, and the Xbox app to capture screen recordings. So, I've got videos coming from all different sources. How do I organize this? Well, in my case, I do it per project. Once again, with Better Touch Tool, I have a shortcut to a folder nested inside my Pictures folder called YouTube. From there, I keep additional folders for things I may access often, like background music or channel graphics. But the folder we're interested in right now is my Projects folder. Inside this folder, I make a new folder per video. Before I launch Final Cut, all the media I plan on using goes in this folder. To make files quick to find, I tag completed projects with a gray dot, and I back up my final renders to iCloud in case something happens to my laptop. And as it turns out, that week I had a file system level corruption on my drive, requiring me to wipe the drive and start over. But because I practice good backup habits, I only lost minimal data. Heading back to Final Cut, I make a new event per video as a way to separate all my footage. Inside my new event, I'll import all the footage from my folder I previously made. By default, for Final Cut, this does make a copy of the files, so if space is an issue, this may not be the way to go for you. But I'm all about having redundant copies of all my files, just in case I accidentally delete something. Just to clarify what we've gone over before, I make the event before I sync the audio and video together. So I've made the event, imported my footage, and put the skeleton of the video together. Now it's time to dig into editing. I have an intro for my channel, and it typically comes after my opening paragraph, so I'll toss that in between these cuts. If I recorded a cool shot for the video, especially a product shot for a review, I'll usually throw that in my project and slightly blur it so that my text title pops. From here, a lot of my time is just spent throwing B-roll over my main clip, but there are times when I have to import something like a screenshot that has a different aspect ratio. If I just dropped the file into my timeline over my main clip, you'd see the edges of my BRoll footage, which doesn't always look great. Highlighting the clip and selecting the drop-down menu can give me the options to transform or crop the clip. For a video I captured, I usually transform and punch in to cover the whole screen, but for a static shot, I like to select crop and then use a Ken Burns effect. Using the Ken Burns effect allows me to set a start and end point crop, which gives some motion to an otherwise still image. Another helpful tool in this menu is the Retime tool. You can use it to speed up or slow down clips, and you can also use it to reverse them. You've seen it several times in this video already. A lot of times I like to use the reverse when adjusting focus. What better way than to make sure that your shots snap into focus perfectly than starting it in focus and cranking it out of focus? Reverse timing can be pure movie magic if it's done correctly. Another way to take your video further is with animation. But be warned, this step takes a long time. I use Apple's Motion for my animations. I'll concede that Adobe's After Effects knocks the socks off of Motion, but Motion is a one-time purchase. It's not abnormal for me to spend an hour on a 10-second animation, and I typically have the animation idea in my head before I start shooting the video. But when it all comes together, the results can look fantastic. For those times where I don't plan ahead well, I use titles to throw some text on screen to clarify something I may not have conveyed well through my script or footage. It's also an easy, quick way to throw text on screen for something like product specs or a recipe. Finally, while I use transitions minimally, I make heavy use of screen effects, especially blur. I'll add blur to a shot with motion to amplify the effect, or I'll throw a Gaussian blur atop my footage to make text on top more readable, like for my intros. Finally, once I've attached my B-roll, dropped in all my animations, and resized and retimed all my clips, I'll throw in 2 more instances of my intro at the end and reverse the order of the second one. This gives the viewer one last reminder of who they're watching, as well as a clean space for YouTube's cards overlay. And for the very last step before I render, I'll throw on some background music. To keep on the up and up, I use music I put together through GarageBand, or request explicit permission from another YouTuber to use their original work. I'll adjust the audio levels accordingly, and then play it back one more time before I export. If everything looks good, I'll export a master file at 4K. Final Cut has a direct YouTube upload button, but I don't bother with that myself. So there we have it, a finished video. But oh no, we're not done. We still have tags, thumbnails, a whole lot left to do. And since the start of my channel, I've used Pixelmator for 100% of my thumbnails. In a pinch, the iOS version is surprisingly powerful, and is responsible for 5 or 6 of my thumbnails that are up right now. More recently, I've moved over to Pixelmator Pro on the Mac. It's overkill for thumbnails. I would tell you a good way to make nice, catchy thumbnails, but I'm still working on that myself. So that's my workflow for editing. GarageBand can be substituted for Audacity on Windows, and Adobe Premiere can be substituted for Final Cut Pro. And on both platforms, PC and Mac, GIMP is a really powerful, free photo editing software. Anyway, that's how I edit my videos. How do you do it? Let me know in the comments below. And did you learn anything from this video? Let me know below. I hope these last couple of videos sparked your creative side. In making them, I realized just how important the whole studio setup is. Anyway, that's all for this one. I'm Jason, aka Maslin Monty. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.